of the world, now I'm living. And the good just gets better, keeps on giving. Not even close to the end, it's just beginning. Life is getting lighter while the days are getting brighter, yeah.
Hey, thanks so very much for joining us today. My name is Ann Perry, and my guest today is Bridgette Love, astro-numerologist all the way from Los Angeles. Hi, Bridgette.
Hi, Ann. Thank you so much for having me. Such an
Oh,
honor to be connecting with you one more time here on your channel. Thank you.
So much fun.
Yes.
So much fun.
It
so
really
much to
is.
say clearly.
Right. Exactly.
Bridgette and I were talking recently. We decided that we thought one of the things that our master number 11s are struggling with is their inability to ground themselves, right? They're really struggling with that. And I thought, you know, Bridgette's such an expert in the field of living the life of the master number 11 because she has two 11s in her core numbers, right? So I thought, who better to ask than her? So Bridgette, tell me, how important is it for the master number 11s to ground themselves?
It's extremely important because, first of all, the 11 is always living in such an abstract manner. You know, they're always living in a world where, first of all, their inner world is so heightened, where they feel like everything that they are actually experiencing. Sometimes there's even like a detachment from the physical reality. So having this ability to have such a strong, not only imagination, but also strong sense of living in a world where they are so up here, you know, I think it's mostly important because there's a sense of connection with your actual physical body, you know, which I think is so important. So, you know, an 11 needs to learn how to ground themselves for sure, because it's something that I think this also stems from the fact that they suffer from anxiety, you know, and, you know, the inability to ground themselves is actually because they are actually throwing things out of proportion. Or, you know, this is just my experience having these numbers is like, I throw things out of proportion. I tend to look at things bigger than they truly are. And it's only because of that 11 energy.
Right.
You know, so it's extremely important to do that. And I really feel like a lot of 11s don't really know how to cope with this energy. You know, I think because it's such a, it's really just intense, to be honest with you. There's really no other word to really describe it.
Well, it's very, you know, you guys are run differently. You vibrate differently. You've got this super high vibration, right?
Right.
So it's like electrical charge. It's almost like having, you know, static on your clothes. You know what I mean? You touch a cat and it zap, you know, kind of thing, that sort of thing when you're patting the animals.
Right.
But for you, the way I look at it for 11s, and tell me if you think this doesn't feel right, but I like to think of the 11s as being the spiritual messenger who gets inspired messages, and they get very frustrated because they know how to get the message. They just don't know how to do anything with it, right? And so it tends to kind of fizzle out. And it's like lightning bolts. Like it comes down through like a lightning bolt, but if the lightning bolt doesn't touch the ground, it's not a lightning bolt. And it didn't manifest into anything, right?
Right.
So,
I think it's because I feel like the 11 has such a strong crown chakra.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, the root chakra is a little bit not aligned here, which is like what you're actually here to touch with your feet, you know. So it's like this is why that electrifying what you're saying is so accurate, because it is sort of like that electrical sudden, you know,
current.
Right. Exactly. So it's powerful stuff, you know, when you're able to understand this number, but then also like understanding that flash is just because, you know, there's also, like I said, a sense of disconnection, I believe in. How do you put that on physicality? You know, that's the question that the 11 has to.
Right. And it's also what haunts the 11s, I find. Because, you know, they've signed this big contract that says I'm going to do something amazing while I'm here. And they keep getting all these inspired ideas, but they're not able to turn it into anything. So they feel lesser than, they feel, you know, not good enough. They feel frustrated. They like, when's my life going to begin? When's that big thing I'm supposed to be doing going to come up? I'm running out of time. Like I'm just freaking out here because I'm running out of time. I got to get this done. So that creates anxiety, right?
Right.
That's the whole thing.
Right. And I think it's also, they have to understand, like 11s have to understand that. I'm speaking like in third person, but I'm really speaking in my experience, you know, that the whole like, oh, this big thing of an 11 is actually just what you're here to manifest in this physical incarnation. So it's like, you know, even those thoughts that you have, like those inventive thoughts or those things that you experience, that is in and of itself a grandeur experience, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
11. So yeah, that's something an 11 has to understand, I believe.
So I know 11s tend to have a tendency to have a hard time determining what's their stuff and
Mm-hmm.
what's somebody else's stuff. What we do know is they walk into a room and they're like a huge magnet, and they
Mm-hmm.
take on everybody's stuff, and then they have this whole, you know, mix of emotions and feelings of you know, all different kinds of highs and lows that they're feeling, and they have a hard time interpreting which one's theirs and which one's not theirs. How does an 11, or anybody for that matter, how do they know when they're not grounded? What does that feel like? What does that look like?
To be honest with you, it feels like depersonification, kind of like you're not even in your actual body.
Mhm.
It
Okay.
feels also like, okay, this is what it feels like. Your actual physical experience is a different existence than your actual emotional experience. So
Okay.
what I'm trying to say here is like when you walk into a room, you're actually absorbing all this energy,
Mhm.
and that becomes sort of like a sense of, I would say like that's kind of like a sense of a part of you that you just don't know how to align with your actual body. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like it's
Yeah.
very abstract. I can't even put it into words, to be honest with you, having this number, because it's like there has to be like I always feel like there needs to be a bridge between here and actually here, like what's
Right.
actually what you're experiencing.
Right.
So it's just something that is intense. Like it's like, you know, these flashes, these insights, these feelings, the emotions, the moods, everything is it all comes in at once, you know. And I think that also, like, you know, I do believe the 11 has to understand some boundaries too in regards to that, because like the emotional absorptivity of the 11 is so heightened. Like, you know, it even comes to a point where even like they tend to imitate other people's energies very quickly. You know,
Mhm.
even when they walk into a room, like it's not because they try to, it's just because they can be chameleons in that aspect as well.
Do you
You
think
know?
that's because that 11s quite often feel the need to conform?
Yeah, I do think there has to be a need. Like, I do think it's because there's a need to conform, because they don't know how to separate again, like that individualistic aspect, which they don't really understand. Because, you know, it's like an eclipse. It's like, I don't really understand who I am and what I'm here to do. What's my purpose? What's
Right.
my motivation?
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's also because they try to please and try to fit in so that they kind of want to feel in a way like, okay, I do have some normalcy in my life. Like there's
Right.
something normal, you know, like that's kind of like their way of, you know, coping with this number.
And they
So
don't
that,
really want to, they don't really
yeah,
want to stand out. They'd sooner blend in rather than stand out.
right. And they're afraid of that. They're
Right.
afraid of that.
So
Yeah.
when we're looking at what this looks like, what it feels, so I would, let's say, if somebody is feeling anxiety, that would be an indication that they're not grounded.
Right.
If somebody is feeling um, confused in thought, you know, that they just can't get their thoughts together, that would be another indication of not feeling grounded.
Right.
Just being a little, the 11 energy is notorious for being the daydreamer, not being able to really connect and be able to get out of their own way. Sometimes even, you know, 11s quite often will suffer from depression, and they have a hard time beating depression because they feel it's just, sometimes it's a bit easier just to get stuck there, you know, and they get a little too stuck in their head, so to speak.
Yes.
Would that be fair?
I completely agree with that. I think that's the thing the 11 has to learn the most, is get out of the headspace.
Right.
You know, so one of the things I can really tell you when I go through that, because I experienced anxiety, just to give you a little anecdote.
Yeah.
Back in 2013, I experienced severe anxiety where my body was actually experiencing symptoms of chronic illnesses, such as even like heart attack, strokes. Like I really thought I was going through those things.
Wow.
But to be honest, one of the simplest things that has really helped me was you just have to be present. Like what I used to do is I used to just stand in my room and I used to name everything in the room. So there's a book right there. There's a, you know, there's a mirror right there. Because that aligns me with my actual physical here.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
You know, so that's one tip I can really give an 11. It's like, so just name what is actually in front of you. Don't put any abstract ideas onto that, you know, onto that physical, because then you're able to just understand it in a way where, okay, it exists and it's there, you know. So that's something I really had to learn to do when I was going through that. Another thing I did, because, you know, when you have anxiety, you think that you're going to die. Like, I'm not trying to sound very
dramatic,
you know,
but it's
exaggerated, but it's like, it's something that you feel like, you know, when you're going through anxiety. And what I used to do is just sing. you know, because there's a thing that I read online that says if you're singing, there's no way in hell that you're dying. You know, so that I had to kind of reassure myself in that way. So you know, that's something I do recommend for 11s, to find something where they know for a fact they're not, you know, passing away when they're going through anxiety, and especially people that experience severe anxiety. That's really my case, you know. So
Right, exactly. So what about, do you work with any healing gemstones, or are there any grounding stones that you like to work with?
For me, like the one that I really love is black tourmaline, because that's the one that really, that's the one. And I actually have one right there for me. But that's because, like, for me as an 11, I tend to, like in an 11 expression, in 11 storage, I tend to, you know, really gravitate towards people's energy, where even that energy affects me 100%. Like it's just, like I mirror everyone's energy. Like if I feel like you're having a down day, I'm going to start feeling that way. If I feel like you're angry, I'm going to start feeling angry. It's just something that I just can't really express, like, or can't really understand. So black tourmaline has been one of those grounding energy stones, because it's really just about having boundaries and understanding also that there's also a sense of protection here that the grounding stone can
don't
give.
Don't you find too that and maybe you haven't figured this one out, but I know a lot of people have told me that if they have their cell phones around them all the time turned on, for example, a lot of people just have to have their cell phone turned on and sitting next to their bed at night. 11s don't do well with that. They just don't do well with any kind of electronics close to their heads when they're sleeping.
Yeah, I think it's because that's such a way where also that disrupts sleep, by the way. It really does. So like, yeah, I agree with that. And it's also something I feel like I need to learn to do, because it's like, I tend to always read my phone when I'm about to go to sleep, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, you know, it's not allowing me to have a peaceful sleep. And that's where the problem comes in as well. You know, so another thing I really wanted to say about, because you asked me about the gemstones and stuff like that. So what I do is like, because it's really about the solar plexus. That's where I believe where all that anxiety is stored, is where your stomach is. So I tend to, I used to do this. I haven't done it recently, but I always put the black tourmaline, I actually tape it on my belly button, and I go to sleep with it to kind of absorb all that energy from my solar plexus. So that's something I give tips for in number 11.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So yeah.
I've heard aromatherapy oils are good too. Patchouli, for one, is supposed to be a really good grounding oil. Another thing too, and we're going to have to do this on another video, but diet is really, really important. Wow, you know, anything white, don't eat it. You know, like white flour, white sugar, anything refined. What I understand is that, you know, go as natural as you possibly can. Very little meat. More vegetable, less protein, that sort of thing. And that's not going to work for everybody. I'm not saying, you know, everybody says, Ann Perry said we have to go out and do that. No, get some guidance, get some medical direction there. But it is my understanding that red meats, you know, heavier proteins, that sort of thing, tend to slow things down. And, you know, we could go on and on about this, but it'll be another 40-minute video. And I love it. We promise we would not do that. But you know, I could just go on and on and on about this. But thing is, with the 11s, they're here to do something. They're here to get something done. They're here to achieve something. So they have to give themselves the best heads up that they can. They have to give themselves the best support that they can. The best support an 11 can give themselves is their own support, right? Because nobody knows how to handle your energy better than you do. Right? So, and I think also what you're saying, like what you said about the red meat, that kind of got me to thinking about something, which is, you know, what happens as an 11 is that all your emotions are sort of, like, let's just say what you absorb, you're trying to digest. Okay, you're trying to get out. So it's like in a metaphorical way, like your diet, let's say the spiritual diet, right, which is what you have to absorb. How do you have the skills to actually digest that and take that out of your system? And I think that's something that the 11 has to understand as well. And another thing I wanted to say was that the double one energy, honestly, because I see even just with ones that just have this energy, they are supercharged. They have so much energy. And this is why sometimes I always tell ones, you guys have to go work out. You guys have to do, like, you know, I'm not one to talk, but that's something I have absorbed myself. So cardio.
yeah, 11s have to find a fitness like regimen, you know, so that they can follow that and they can feel more grounded, I feel, because that also causes endorphins,
Yeah.
you know. So that's something I had to say about that. So I think because having that double one energy, it's double the energy. Like it's like, ooh, I don't know, like I don't know how to deal with this energy. It's just it's too much.
It's
You
kind of
know?
like, 11s are sort of like they're sort of like a radio channel,
Mhm.
that they're either tuned in or they're not. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're tuned in on everybody else's stuff but their own. And I think
Hmm.
about myself, a couple of years ago, I had this massive gallbladder attack. And they took the gallbladder out. They said, "Oh my God, it was so bad. You had gangrene in your gallbladder. Surely to God, you saw the signs." And I'm like, "Nope, didn't see anything." Right now, I'm a 7. I'm a head case, right? But I'm not. I wasn't tuned into what was going on in my body, and I was saying, "Oh, I had no signs whatsoever." But then, when I got thinking about it, I started realizing, yeah, I wasn't digesting my foods the way I used to. I was going to bed with the Tums every other night, that sort of thing. And I just put it down to menopause and hormonal adjustments and stuff. I didn't really think anything more of it, right? But I
Yeah.
wasn't tuned in. And you know what? Once the gallbladder was removed, I put my hand over that area and I tuned in and I asked the gallbladder, "What do you want me to know?"
Mm.
And the message that came was, "You're not listening."
Oh.
No, like I'm like, "Oh, you're right. I'm not." You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. So I've really tried to pay attention to my body because I can put up with a lot of pain. I can put up with a lot of discomfort.
Mhm.
But that was pretty bad. I could have died from that, you know.
Yeah.
So
That's
that
so
was my wake up call.
yeah. So it's in a way like it's about being self-aware as well, right? Like
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So you have to be your own best advocate, right?
Right, exactly. And that's, I think, one thing 11 has to understand too, that, it's not up to other people to understand that sense of, this sense of, I really feel like an 11 just has it's like they're in a bubble, you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah,
it's like, nothing can really penetrate that bubble, but at the same time, that's kind of beautiful. But then that's scary too, because you feel so alone.
that's
Like,
right.
that's what I just feel like that's what it is. And I honestly, like, even though I said some of the things right now in this video, like how abstract even though I said it in words, it does feel very abstract.
Hmm,
It
hmm.
feels very abstract. Like sometimes you're like, is this even real? Like it
Yeah,
feels very like that's how ungrounding the 11 energy can be. Like, is this even real? Like, is this even something like sometimes even 11s, like I've read about this, that 11s tend to self-inflict pain, like in a way where they want to just see like, oh, is this real?
can I feel
Because
it? Right.
yeah. So that's just something I feel like I've experienced too, like, oh, this is real. Like that's one big question I always ask myself.
So that's great. You know what I'm going to create a checklist for
Mm-hmm.
the 11s in terms of what techniques you've suggested that we can use.
Yeah.
I'm going to create the checklist. I'm going to put it on my website under my resources tab there. And I've got the Master 11 Corner started. I should have announced that. Yes, the Master 11 Corner
I
is
saw
started.
that. That looks so good.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of information there too, but for something downloadable. And I'm sure Bridgette will be doing the same too and supporting you guys with that as well. So
Yes.
thanks, Bridgette. This has been awesome. I've wanted to do this for a long time.
Appreciate
So
you.
this is
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you for your insight.
Of
It's
course. Thank you. Thank you for yours as well.
all my pleasure. And
Yeah.
how can people get a hold of you?
Sure. So you guys can just check me out on my YouTube channel. You guys can just type out Bridgette Love, and I'll be the first one there. And you guys can also check out my website. It is bridgettelove.com. And actually, I started a mailing list. So if you guys are interested and actually receiving your first Bridgette Love newsletter, I'll be posting an exclusive video about your life path in that particular newsletter. So if you guys are interested, please make sure to sign up on my homepage. So
I'm
yeah,
already
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Likewise, I think that's really important. So,
Yeah,
so if
thank you.
anybody's got any questions whatsoever, post them down below. Both Bridgette and I will be monitoring those questions as they come in, even though it's on my site. I think we'll post this on yours as well. And if you wouldn't mind liking and sharing and commenting, I'd really appreciate it. You can find me at AnnPerryNumerologist.com. Hoping you guys are all having an awesome day, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care for now.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye now.